Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Story number 1. Infectious Medicine, written by Poseidon _____. Dirk on side. These past few centuries had been rough. Sure, but the start of this gig had been like any other. Sign up to reap the souls of the sentient species when these conditions are met that was set forth when they were created until the species goes extinct. It was a pretty common career, and at first he thought he got lucky. Most gigs only lasted a few million years. It was rare for sentient species to make it civilization. Once upon a time, he was even excited. He could move up in the world with how many souls he had harvested. The worst part was that all the other Reapers laughed. They saw his statistics and assumed he was so shitty at his job that it would be any day now before he got sacked. Then they'd be able to take over a species that was already in the space age and reap the benefits for themselves. Well, they could have it. Durkon knew that he was good at his job. It was why he had been chosen. But this species was infuriating. He'd see the human's heart had stopped and showed up to reap the soul, and then it got restarted. The worst was when the same human's heart stopped, the other human started it again. But then it stopped again, so he couldn't just leave. But the damned human wouldn't actually die, and he couldn't harvest the soul. His numbers were so abysmal, he knew that he'd never be able to find work once the gig was up. He didn't even want to know what his ratio of deaths to harvests was anymore. Massive amounts of blood loss. They'd pump more blood in from someone else. Organ failure. Implant a new one. About to fall to death from a height that would normally kill them. Giant pieces of cloth that slowed them down. All their skin burned off. Just cover it up, transplant some more, and grow it back. Deadly infection. Antibiotics. Humans were the worst. And what a horrible client. It was like they were trying to make his job as awful as possible. He knew that it was just starting to. They'd find other planets soon, and their population would explode, because although they didn't breed too fast compared to other species he'd reaped, they just didn't die. For a while now, he'd had hellish work, but at least it was constant. Soon, it'd get worse by the day. Miserable little feckers. He wished that he could just throw a meteor at their planet before they could get someone off of it, so they could just move on to something else. Oh, that's a warp drive. Too late now then. Durkon called it a day and went home. This was not something he wanted to deal with right now. Durkon was on busier than ever, showing up to the humans on the verge of death, and then they just didn't die. Stuck in this hellish contract, unable to leave until hopefully the species got genocided by one of their neighbors for being so insufferable. Hey! Durkon looked up. It was Boleth, the guy in charge of the Falconians. He'd been doing it forever, and everyone agreed that he'd had the best job. Durkon didn't think Boleth had ever even looked at him before, let alone spoken. What was a bigwig like him doing here? Boleth, it's an honor to speak to you. What has brought you here? Durkon hated speaking so formally, but unless he really wanted to be chewed out, it was better to be respectful. No matter how much he envied Boleth for having the perfect fecking species for basically the rest of his career. You damn well know why I'm here. You suck at your job. You suck at your job so much that it is affecting me. You know how many deaths I've shown up for in the past week that didn't actually die. I was sure I'd get a nice bonus once the Falconians made first contact with your little Blackwater shithole, since the diseases would decimate them. Instead, none of the first contact team have died. Sure, they got sick, but the humans just made them eat something. I couldn't do a damn thing. I've seen your numbers, but how the feck is it infectious? I've had this nice, cushy gig for millions of years, and all of a sudden your species shows up and fucks it all up. How did you let their population get to 15 billion on their home planet alone? How lazy are you? Do you show up, take a nap, and then clock out for the day? What the feck are you doing? Durkin lost it. Completely ape crap. It was frowned upon, simply to raise your voice to a superior. Durkin just started beating the crap out of him. No words, just pure, unadulterated violence. Boleth was in a daze as Durkin's fists continually made contact with his face. Before he knew it, Durkin was being pulled off of Boleth by other Reapers who happened to be in the area. You call me lazy? Lazy! I've shown up to more deaths in the past week than you have in the past 100,000 years! Do you have any idea what the species is like? They just don't die. All of you feckers see is the goddamn ratio. I know how bad it is. It's my ratio. Can't even quit because I signed on for the full lifespan of the species. It's driving me insane. I haven't even gone home in the past week because they found a bunch of habitable planets and suicidally throwing themselves at them, but still not dying. You call me lazy again, and I'll fucking kill you, you goddamn prick. I don't care how powerful you are, and I don't give a crap about the consequences. Fuck you, and fuck your species. I hope this crap is infectious so that you can feel a fraction of the pain that I've dealt with. Just wait until the humans teach them how to do organ transplant. You won't sleep for a month. Durkin continued to rave incessantly, even as other Reapers tried to calm him down. He'd snapped. Durkin got angrier and angrier until he eventually just passed out while Boleth was left to recover. The other Reapers looked at each other with confusion. What the hell is medicine? I don't know, but I sure hope none of my species ever figure it out. End of story. Story number 2. Spoils of Conquest, written by the missing Think. Grand Admiral Thrag, High Commander of the Second Great Fleet of Conquest, was unhappy. True, the invasion and occupation had been a success, but there was no glory in the conquest, no great exploits to brag about in his reports, and no thrill of combat to savor. As soon as his ships had appeared in orbit, the pathetic humans had signaled their complete and unconditional surrender. Here he was, in command of one of the greatest weapons of destruction ever devised, fitted with weaponry capable of devastating an entire planet. And not a single shot had been fired. For a moment he toyed with the idea of incinerating one of the human cities anyways, but he knew that his superiors would view it as a waste of resources. It wasn't worth picking up another reprimand just because he was sulking. Instead, he turned to his communications officer. Transmit the standard surrender terms on all frequencies. 1 million slaves, usual contract. With that done, he retired to his cabin. Maybe a drink and a little sleep would improve his mood. It was less than an hour later that he was disturbed by his communications officer. Sir, we have an urgent radio message from the humans asking for clarification of the surrender terms. Put them through, audio only. There was a click, followed by a brief burst of static. Then the humans started speaking. Hello, this is Ahmed Shalil, Secretary-General of the United Nations of Earth. Am I speaking with the leader of the invasion force? You are. This is Thrag speaking. What do you want? We just needed to discuss the terms of the slavery contract you sent. Do you really require these slaves to work 20 Earth hours per week, and for 5 Earth years? Yeah, those are the standard terms, yes. And for working this period, each human receives 1 kilogram of gold for each year. Correct? Thrag tried not to let his irritation show in his voice. Yes, it's all standard. Okay, one final question, if you don't mind. There was a strained tone in the Secretary General's voice. Are you sure you only want 1 million? End of story. The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much.